Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Bishop Desmond, and welcome to the Windrush National Organisation online engagement meeting. My name is Reverend Clive Foster, and I'm a senior minister of the Pilgrim Church in Nottingham and also vice chair of the Windrush National Organisation. These meetings have been going for a good number of months now since the COVID pandemic, and it's an opportunity for the community to actually talk about any effects that are happening around the Windrush schemes. And as a result of that, we do have online members of the Home Office who are able to facilitate and respond to those questions as well. As I mentioned, these meetings have been happening on a regular basis on each third Thursday of the month. And they are really important to continue for justice for the Windrush generation, all those who have been affected as a result of the Windrush scandal. One of our strap lines as the Windrush National Organisation is, advocating for better outcomes. So we do see these meetings as a really good opportunity for members of the public to engage. We ask that people are respectful. We ask that you can make your point, but you do so in a way whereby, there is that respect given. And we also have had a really good working relationship that if questions cannot be asked by the Home Office colleagues, then we have a working agreement whereby they will actually come back to us and provide more details if an answer can be not given on the evening. So don't get frustrated if an answer cannot be given straight away. We've got built up a relationship whereby hopefully we can get some kind of a feedback, even if it cannot be presented in this meeting. So just to say that we always normally formally start these meetings just by offering a word of prayer. So I'd like to invite those of you who would like to join in doing so now to do that now. And do that now. We'll just have a prayer just to kick off the meeting officially. Shall we pray? Father, we just come before you again, and we just thank you for this opportunity to have these moments whereby we can discuss these issues. We pray that your Holy Spirit will just guide us and be in control and lead us into the way that you would have justice to prevail. Thank you for all that you have been and continue to be. And we ask that you'll continue to guide and direct. For we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. So before I hand over to Bishop Desmond Jadu, obviously one of the things that we are dealing with here with regards to the effects of the Windrush scandal is actually dealing with people's trauma. Sadly, we do know that sadly people who have been wrongly affected have sadly passed away, and they have not been able to be in receipt of getting either sometimes their compensation or their status sorted out. And we know that we are dealing with, in some cohort, an aging population, and we are losing people. And we just want to take a moment to recognize as well that we have lost recently one of the really strong campaigners in this area, Lee Pennant, who's been a fighter for ensuring justice for the Windrush generation, working with Movement for Justice. Lee was the central organizer in the campaign to widen the Windrush and end deportations, and she recently sadly passed away. And it is further recognition that we are losing people who are really giving themselves to this work, and we want to really acknowledge them as well. And so, we just want to take a moment just to remember Ewelline Pennant, and to be thinking about her family, and to be remembering the great work that she has done in this work. So we'll just take a moment just to be quiet. And again, it's another moment, I guess, where we can again remember those people whom we've sadly lost, who have been campaigning for the cause as well. And many of these people have actually been caught up in it and are no longer with us. So we'll just take a brief moment just to remember the life and the work of Eweline Pennant. Thank you. I'd like to now hand over to Bishop Desmond Jadu, who's going to give us an update at this moment. Bishop Desmond.
Thank you, Reverend Clive, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to you all to this online engagement meeting of the Windrush National Organization. We've just gone past 7 o'clock and it's the 20th of July. As you're aware, we didn't have a meeting last month because we know that there was the Windrush 75 Thanksgiving and celebrations. No matter what you think about it, we have to give God thanks for our elders and celebrate the efforts of our elders. And that's what that is really about. Welcome this evening to Nigel Hills and Marion Mason from the Home Office as well, who have pledged their allegiance to joining us as much as they possibly can. It's greatly appreciated that you've given your evening to join us today. In terms of WNO activities, I'm pleased to say we've now launched our national tour. That was in Bradford last week. It's the first leg of the tour, well supported. And I just want to say well done to one of our directors, Nigel Guy, and his colleague up there, Charles Dakers, who I think is on the meeting tonight, for organising the Windrush Seven Seas Conference, and the Home Office were there. As a part of our strategy, as you're probably aware, we were doing face-to-face meetings prior to COVID. I'm pleased to say now that we're on our way with them. So on the 1st of August, we'll have one in Handsworth in Birmingham. And those of you on the call would have received some of that information because it went with the mail out. And then on the 29th of August, we'll have one in Walsall. And I do believe, although I hope he gives me the nod, 19th of September, Reverend Clive. Yep, he's giving me the nod. So 19th of September, I was waiting for that confirmation, will be Nottingham. Following Nottingham, we hope to be in Leicester. And at the moment, just to give you a flavour of the tour, we're talking to people in, I've got talking to someone in Belfast at the moment. We're talking to people in areas in Scotland at the moment. Also Bristol. And we took part. Formally, I addressed Milton Keynes full council meeting last night, and they passed a Windrush motion, and they will be happy to receive our tour in Milton Keynes as well, and also be looking at Bedford. So, and not forgetting, of course, I've been told several times, don't forget Hackney. So we are moving on with that, and as soon as we've got all the dates tied up, we will let you know. The purpose of that is this. On this platform, there is no privacy. And one of the things I think a lot of people sometimes come onto the meetings and they want to talk about their individual cases, they can write in. With the engagement meetings, how they used to be constructed and delivered, and that will happen now, is that we have a plenary session, which will be quite short, because we have these as plenary sessions as well. But then you'll be able to have face-to-face one-to-one sessions with the Home Office and also WNO advocates as well, which works really well. And during that, you see, you can also get your points across as well. So the next meeting is on Tuesday, the 1st of August at the Cannon Street Memorial Baptist Church in Soho Road, Handsworth. The last time we had a meeting of this nature there, we had 400 people there and we managed it quite well. So it's just to let you know that we're moving on with that as well. And also as well, our international conference has been planned, and we'll have more information on that at our next meeting, the full structure of it. And also as well, there will be a gala dinner on the evening where we put funds into our Windrush Welfare Fund. And I can tell you we've been busy in the past month assisting people with that fund as well. So we are continuing with what we're doing as WNO. We have met with the Home Office regarding some publicity that you may have seen in The Guardian. And we have met with the Home Office. And as far as we are concerned, from our side, we have no issues with the Home Office, and Nigel is here as well, and I'm sure he will say what he's got to say. But as far as we're concerned, we have no issues with the Home Office, and we clearly want to develop that all important working relationship and continue that working relationship in terms of building that bridge and providing that conduit between you, the community, and the Home Office, because that's our purpose here. And as Reverend Clive Foster said, advocating for better outcomes for the Windrush generation. So 2 big pieces of news there, obviously our international conference and our face-to-face national tour. And these meetings will continue as well. And I've just given you a flavor that we will be moving around the country. There's about 21 different cities that we intend to visit over the next 12 months, taking us into Windrush 76. So I'm going to leave it there at the moment. And now I'm going to call in and hand over to Nigel Hills and Marion Mason from the Home Office, who's going to give us the appropriate updates. Once they've done that, we'll then open it to a Q&A session. And by the way, yes, Walsall is the, oh, someone's just asking, Anne-Marie, yes, Walsall is the 29th of August, Tuesday, 29th of August. Thank you. Nigel, good evening.
Good evening, everybody. So I'll introduce Marianne in a moment, and she has got a short slide pack, Bishop Jadu, if you can enable us to share that in due course. So good evening. So June Elizabeth was asking where Marianne fits in. So if I can explain that to everybody just to start off with, and who I am. I think there was a little bit of confusion at the time before last on the call about who I actually am and where I fit in. So my name's Nigel Hills. I am the head of the Windrush schemes. So I directly lead the Windrush compensation scheme. And I'm also accountable for, although I don't actually manage the people, I'm accountable for the Windrush status scheme. And you may or may not have encountered one or both of those schemes. Marianne, I'm really pleased Marianne Mason is here with me today. So June Elizabeth, as I was asking earlier, so Marianne works directly to me. She is one of my senior team. She works alongside, some of you may have come across a chap called Andrew Marriott, who runs all the casework operations, and Caroline Lawless delivers the policy, and Marianne sits on that team. And Marianne has stepped in to a role which brings together the front end part of our operation. So the vulnerable persons team, the help line, the what we call the complex team that deals with urgent exceptional payments. And she's also very kindly taken on work for our briefing and correspondence team, and also a really important piece that I'm really keen on around better, more active, more face-to-face engagement. And some of you may have come across the team. They're out in Brixton, Bradford. They're out of 4 or 5 events in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and we will continue to revisit and get back into those face-to-face engagement sessions that we suspended before COVID lockdown, and it's taken us a while to get back into that. And as Bishop Jadu mentioned, those sessions will involve the ability for you to speak to Home Office individuals, and we can advise you about how you might want to make an application to the scheme. The other thing I would say is that my team will be out and about supporting the bigger sessions. So they were out in Bradford for the launch of the tour, and we'll be there on the 1st of August. In fact, I'm coming along myself on the 1st of August to the tour date in Birmingham. So Marianne, you'll hear a lot about Marianne. She is building on the team that's already there with some extra people. And the other thing that we'll be delivering, and apologies, Marianne, if I'm stealing your thunder here, but the other thing we'll be delivering is, at the moment, we're in the process of, we've really closed down the amount of time it takes to get allocated to a substantive caseworker for a decision in the compensation scheme, it's down to less than 5 months from the start to when you apply, which is like 18 months when I took over a year ago. But we're still conscious that whilst you're going through that first bit of the process, that what we call a preliminary assessment and eligibility assessment, people still want to have a named person. So these individuals that are being brought in will be named individuals, people who will have you'll be able to speak to, you'll know their name, you'll have a contact, and they can help to make sure that where a claim passes through the process and the system, that people have got a better awareness of where that is up to. Marianne will talk very briefly in a minute about where we are with payments and offers, but what I would just accept is that there is always more to do. You know, we're going to talk about where we are with payments and offers, but this is not about a success of the scheme. This is just about an update about where we are. We want to work with all of you. Bishop Jadu mentioned the meeting that we had with Windrush National Organisation, actually with the Immigration Minister. And I just want to reaffirm from the Home Office side, I am very committed to working with the Windrush National Organisation. You know, the number of individuals that are engaged and involved in that, the challenge that offers, which is a healthy, I think, constructive challenge. And I welcome challenge because that will enable us to improve and speed up the process. And we will continue, Marianne will continue to come out and engage with other organisations across the country, because, you know, we recognise there are a lot of people who want a voice out there, and they want us to be available to listen to their concerns and their thoughts about where the scheme should go. So I'm going to stop there and pass over to Marianne, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers after that. Marianne?
Thank you. I'm just going to try to, oh, that's incorrect because I've got the wrong spelling on this screen. Just bear with me. Okay. Can everybody see the screen there? Can you see
we can
my
see
screen?
it. Yeah, we can, yes.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. First of all, I just wanted to extend my thanks to WNO, Bishop Jadu and Reverend Foster for allowing us to join today. One of the things over the short time that I've been in this role that I've learned is that we really do need to listen with an open heart and, you know, work together. And it's very difficult because we appreciate that some people just aren't ready to work with us yet. And we understand the reasons behind that. But I think by working together, we're already starting to make some small steps forward. And the willingness and the passion is there from my team. We want to come out, we want to do a good job, we want to hear what people have to say. And just to say on that point that some of the conversations that have happened, for those of you on the call today that WNO have been part of, Bishop Jadu, Clive Foster, June Elizabeth, Glenda Caesar and others have actually influenced changes that have been made to some of the work that we do. So it is really important that we can listen and listen to hear and listen to try to take forward what we can and be honest where we can't. So some of the presentation that I've got today, there's obviously that transparency and honesty in terms of explaining some of our limitations as well in what we can and we can't do. So thank you. I'm just going to talk for a few minutes about the update on where we are with the WCS scheme, how we support vulnerable people, and then just a little case study where I'll try to explain through that our limitations, as I've mentioned. So how many people have been helped by the Windrush compensation scheme?
So over the slides are just stuck on the first slide of the assistance one.
Okay.
Shall I try and share the slides from my computer?
Yeah, they're moving through on mine, but I'll stop sharing a moment and see if I can rectify that.
wonders of modern technology. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah, that's in presentation mode. That's helpful. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and it is moving. Yep.
And then
right, okay, sorry. So you see, if it takes 10 civil servants to get a PowerPoint up, there you go. So okay, so people that have been assisted through the scheme. So 6,000 people have applied for compensation. 2/3 of those, over 66% of claims, have had a final decision. And up until over 75 million has been paid or offered in compensation. And when we say paid or offered, that is, you'll see the numbers there, paid across 1681 claims, and a further 12.29 million has been offered. So this is where we're waiting people to accept their offer, or they have a tier 1 or a tier 2 review. So that the reviews that I'm mentioning are, if somebody isn't happy with their offer, they can go on and submit a review against that decision, and a further consideration of that claim and a review of that claim is made. And then finally, during the month of May, the Home Office paid out over 1.4 million in compensation. Okay. So I just wanted to mention, Nigel had mentioned some of the different teams that we have, and he mentioned that we have the help team. So that's a free service where people can telephone the help team, and there's a number at the end, which will be on the slides to share. And the help team can answer queries on both schemes, so both the Windrush compensation scheme and the Windrush documentation scheme. So this can be where people can contact us and ask some questions, see whether they're eligible for the scheme, see what they need to do next, and get the support to be able to start to consider submitting a claim for those. And then sometimes within those calls, it's evident, having conversations with people, that some people are going to struggle more than others, and they need some additional support. I mean, you know, Reverend Foster spoke about the aged population of this of the Windrush cohort, and people that sadly have passed away. And within this, there are obviously quite a lot of older people and people with vulnerabilities. So we set up a small dedicated team that the caseworkers can refer into. They can seek support and advice from. The call handlers on the help team can refer to, and this team will then support people. So the different services that they can offer includes, when someone goes for documentation, they have to provide their biometrics for a biometric residence permit. And so normally people will go to a location, a biometric centre, to be able to have their biometrics taken. On the vulnerable persons team, we offer a mobile service. So they go out to people's homes, they go into care homes, and they support people to get their mobile biometrics enrolled. Obviously, all of that is done with the acceptance of the person. There's a number of telephone calls before that happens so that people feel comfortable, and we obviously try to arrange it so that we're able to do a few at a time. So when we're going out to a certain point in the country, and we're able to be able, you know, make sure that we get through a few. But we've been able to really reduce the numbers outstanding there, are in a good position. So if somebody is concerned about how, you know, I don't want to put a claim in because I know I won't be able to do certain elements of that claim, what they should do is just contact the help team and ask for some additional support. The other piece of work that the vulnerable persons team can do is they can support on accessing services. So, for example, if somebody was in touch and they were saying that they haven't been able to work and they're going to be evicted from their accommodation, they can get in touch with the bailiffs and they can have a conversation and see whether a different plan can be arranged, either a different payment plan, or see whether they will hold off on evicting. Naturally, as I said, we have our limitations and that doesn't always work, but we have had a number of successes where we have been able to get people to hold off on taking further action because we explain that the person is going through the Windrush process. Similarly, we can go to organisations such as Shelter, we can go to the local authorities, and we can support people to get appointments. Accessing other services like medical services. So we have some vulnerable people naturally who maybe have different mental health support needs, and we're able to direct and get them access into additional services, for example, getting them set up with meetings with social workers, etc., and also maybe speaking to social workers as their advocates on their behalf. So there's a number of things that the team can help with. Another one is access to benefits, to support people to get appointments with the benefits agency, DWP, etc. But what they can't do, and this is the limitation, when I said about housing, for example, we don't have a stock of houses that we're able to give people. We don't have a direct in with the local authority, but we do have contacts that we can get in touch with and support people to try to get appointments with the local authorities. So I wanted to be quite clear on the limitations of the team, but we have been able to have some really good successes in supporting people.
Just a couple
Do you
of
want
things.
the next slide, please,
Just
Nigel?
a couple of things
Thank
before
you.
we move off that slide. Sorry, Marianne.
Yep.
Just to reaffirm. So I think we'll add it to the slide, but just to be clear for people on the call, biometrics are not needed for a Windrush compensation scheme application. The help team support people with status and with Windrush compensation. So it's only if you're applying for status that you need to lodge your biometrics, just so that's really clear. And also, the team do have an ability, if you're really not able to lodge your biometrics, say, you know, you're physically or mentally unable to lodge your biometrics, then there is a way that we can exceptionally validate biometrics if you're really unable to do so. But if we can and we are able to capture those biometrics for the status application, but you're unable to travel, then we will come out to the individual to capture those. But it's only about status. Biometrics are not needed for the Windrush compensation scheme. And the other thing I thought I would just take this opportunity to say is that, you know, Clive Foster and Bishop Jadium, there's been conversation, you know, sadly about with the age of the individuals, some people have passed away, you know, and I'm really sad, and we really take that personally. But if people are and have been suffering from a life-threatening illness, and you get in touch with the help team or the compensation scheme, we can and we will expedite, make a quicker application. The law says we can't, we've got to take claims in date order. That's what the courts have said, but we have got an exception to that. And where somebody has got a life-threatening illness, we can and we do accelerate that consideration if you let the teams know that is the case. Sorry, Marianne, to intervene.
No, that's fine. That's helpful. Thank you. So if we go to the next slide. So this is just to show that obviously there's some the information that we have in our data that goes out as well about the vulnerable persons team, and to the end of May 2023, as it says there, they've been able to provide support to just over 2,000 individuals. The other thing I wanted to mention was the urgent and exceptional circumstances policy. So we call these UEPs, urgent exceptional payments. So people can put a request in for urgent exceptional payment for financial support if they're, and the policy is also online, but if their request is urgent and exceptional and they're waiting for the full consideration of their compensation claim. So the process for that is that people can submit a claim, they explain what the reasons are, and we then have obviously a set of criteria to consider it against. So urgent and exceptional, for example, would be somebody has been made homeless, but the things, you know, we'll do things in stages. So the urgent element will be to look initially at their accommodation. We'll also see, we won't necessarily initially make a payment, we'll also see whether we can support in other ways, like I mentioned. So if we're able to get people support into other accommodation or housing, we would also do that through the vulnerable persons team, rather than necessarily making a payment initially. But so the urgent element has to be there. And for example, if somebody wants to submit a claim and they need some support for the homelessness element, we can support with that. But then obviously there may be other elements later down the line that they then need support with. We've supported with things, for example, like when people have returned from overseas and they've required some accommodation for a short period, until we've been able to get appointments with housing or social housing support. We've been able to support people with clothing, with white goods for homes, and a variety of different reasons that people have requested. So just wanted to mention there the urgent exceptional payments team. People can get in touch with them again through the help team, or submit a claim directly. And the value of the payments approved up until the end of May, as it says on there, is £316,356.86. So they're the payments that have been made out. Usually the payments are up to £5,000. Some of them are a lot smaller. Some of them are up to 5,000, and on occasion we have been paid over the 5,000. Just the point to make on that as well, that if someone's compensation claim is then successful, we do take that off the final payment offer. So say, for example, somebody has had a £5,000 exceptional payment and they were given an award for ease, I'll say, of £100,000, then their offer would then be £95,000, because it would show that they've had the £5,000 already. So just to be clear on that. So this is for that period of time that people are awaiting their consideration of their award. Thank you, Nigel. Did you have anything to add?
No, sorry, I was just multitasking, trying to get my mute off. So next slide.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to say the case study and then just pick up on a couple of those things on limitations that I said. So this is just an example of somebody that we supported 12 months ago. This person arrived in the UK in March 1973 and was granted a no time limit status under the Windrush scheme in August 2019. A compensation claim was submitted and there was no fixed address, and so this person was homeless because he hadn't been able to demonstrate his immigration status. So there we can see that this person had those challenges faced, and therefore that is an immediate consideration of their eligibility for compensation, because they've come through the Windrush scheme. They've been here since 1973 and they've had a no time limit status, so they're eligible. But the thing sometimes that people get confused at with the compensation scheme is you may be eligible, but then you may not be entitled to any compensation. But here we see that this person hasn't been able to, has lost his home due to his difficulties demonstrating his status. So this person is also highly vulnerable because they had complex mental health issues, and they were supported by the vulnerable person team to access a number of services, including shelter supported on this to help this person find suitable accommodation. We also supported an urgent exceptional payment request, and there was a deposit to securing a rental property which was approved. And then once the person was in that property, we were then able to look at supporting to furnish the property and get some other essential items that this person needed. Again, I just want to make the point there that we went to shelter. They were able to support to get the property. We weren't able to magic up a property. We don't have the facility to be able to give people those properties. Just try to work with other organisations to support. The VPT then continued, as I said, to support to get the additional items for this person. And then later down the line, there was that conversation about submitting, and the person had submitted their compensation claim. During that time, they had their urgent exceptional payment, and since they've been able to take their award and accepted their award for the final compensation. So that kind of just covered off a few things. But the other thing I wanted to mention was just around the eligibility, because there has been quite a lot of misinformation out there in the public. So the eligibility is the side around the person's status, and then whether they get paid the compensation is due to the fact that they have been impacted by their lack of status at the time. And that has to be, the impact is status related. At quite a few of the events, we've had people who've asked questions, and I know a lot of the advocates get a lot of questions where people have said that they've had real difficulties, they've had racist encounters, they've lost their jobs due to a number of reasons, and we always will come back to saying, was it status related? So I just wanted to mention that as well. As you see in this example, this person's was status related in the top line, and then they were able to apply for compensation as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to reaffirm that, so people have to be they have to have lawful right to remain, to live in the UK, and it's the inability to demonstrate that lawful status that, and as Marianne said, this does cause a lot of confusion, and there's quite a lot of misinformation, unfortunately, that people can encounter on social media. So that's one of the big reasons why we're coming out, to try and help just to make that as clear as it can be. Is there another slide, Marianne?
Yes, one more. Thank you. So yeah, the final slide is just I mentioned the helpline there. So it's a free phone number. Obviously, we recognise that there are people overseas, and if they get in touch via email, then we are able to give them a call back, because although it's a free phone number in the UK, we don't have the facility to offer that free phone number from overseas. So the easiest way to do that is us to return the call. And also, I've mentioned on there, We Are Digital, who are a claimant assistance provider who can support people to complete their Windrush compensation claims, and also support people who need support with probate for the claim for a deceased estate. So part of the estate's claims is that if somebody hasn't left a will and doesn't have an executor, then they need to be supported by probate. So we work with people to get probate, and We Are Digital can also support on that as well. Alongside those, obviously, and you heard at the beginning, there's a number of people on this call who we also know are doing a great job working with people and advocating on their behalf and supporting with forms as well. And then the latest versions of the forms are on the website. People can download them. People who want paper copies can contact the help team, and we'll send them out as well, obviously free of charge to people. So if people need copies of the forms, want to have a conversation, want to have a look at them, and then get back in touch with the help team, then that's how you can do that, through those numbers. Apologies, my dog's whining in the background. Thank you.
And we can send over the slides, Bishop Jadu and Reverend Foster, and then maybe you could upload them or share them, and then the links will be available if that's helpful.
Yes, it would be. It would be.
Okay, that's us then.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to hand over to Reverend Clive, who will take us through the Q&A.
Thanks, Bishop Desmond. Thanks, Marion and Nigel, for taking us through that presentation. We've come to the point where we have the opportunity to ask questions of the Home Office personnel here. So we're encouraging people just to use the reaction button. So you can just raise your hand, and then we'll just take that in order. And as we said, this is an opportunity for you to ask any question with regards to status, compensation, or other elements of the Windrush schemes as you see it. Do bear in mind as well that obviously you may have an issue with a personal case. You can by all means raise that here, but it's not a situation whereby a person's individual case can be resolved on this call, as it were. But obviously people's personal experience or cases can be used as an example of. But I'm sure you can appreciate that not all personal cases can be resolved on this call here. So if you would like to raise a question, make a point, please just raise your hand. We are encouraging people as well. Where possible, please do come on camera so that we can pick you up. So the floor is open now for questions and doing so. Just before anyone else comes on, people are still probably just warming up to this. So don't be shy. This is a great opportunity that you have. Nigel, can you just remind us and tell us a little bit again about caseworkers and a named person, and what that expectation is in terms of that named caseworker staying with someone throughout the duration of their case? Because I think these are one of the things that people do reflect on. And I know you hinted at it earlier, but if you could just remind us again what the position will be.
Yeah, so just to be clear, so when you apply to the Windrush compensation scheme, there are some processes that happen at the beginning. So you'll get an acknowledgement very quickly that your application has been received, but you won't actually have a caseworker at that point. Then there'll be an assessment of eligibility. So Marianne spoke about, you know, whether you remember the Windrush generation. If you've been already through the task force and your status determined, then that's obviously much more straightforward. It'll just go straight through. Then it goes into a team called the preliminary assessment team, and their job is they will do three things. So they will either, if it's clear that you've had an impact, so an impact of just a first level impact of life, then they're able to pay a £10,000 initial payment. That's what we aim to do on all those individuals who've had an impact. And this is all happening in the first few weeks of your application. So you'll have the first acknowledgement, then you'll get confirmation of eligibility, then it will be with the preliminary payment assessment team. There are three outcomes. Either you'll get a £10,000 payment, you get a letter from them to confirm that, or you'll not get a £10,000 payment, but there might be more inquiries and more information that's needed. So you'll get, at that point, you'll get a letter either confirming your £10,000 payment, or you get a letter confirming that on the current information, we're not able to confirm the £10,000 payment, but more information is needed. It'll go to what we call a substantive, a proper big casework decision. Or the third outcome at that preliminary assessment stage is if you've got no evidence at all. So you've not had any loss or any negative impact due to an inability to demonstrate your lawful status. And the word we use, I've been practicing this word, it's if it's unequivocally clear. So it's absolutely clear you've had no impact. So as Marianne described, you might have experienced some treatment, or you might have had some experiences that are very negative, but it's not about your lawful status in the UK. Then you'll get a confirmation at that preliminary assessment stage. You'll get a full decision that says, we've assessed your claim, you know, you're not entitled to compensation, and these are the reasons why. So you'll get that within about 6 weeks, actually, within a small amount of time. But by then you will have had 2 or 3 letters, contacts from us to say that it's going through those stages of the process. And that's the bit I was talking about with Marianne's team. Now, what I'd like to do is have a named person for all of that, not just for casework, so that as you apply, you will get a named person, a point of contact, who will be your named point of contact through the process. Currently, you go through those 3 stages, so the eligibility, and then the entitlement preliminary assessment. and then it gets allocated to a substantive caseworker. Yeah, so whether you get a £10,000 payment or you get a not yet letter, not enough information, there'll be a bigger piece of consideration that's required from the point that at which you apply to the point that it goes to that substantive caseworker, including all of those bits I've just described. We're now around 4.5, getting on for 4 months. So it's quite a short time. You'll then get the point it goes to a substantive caseworker. That caseworker will contact you. And from that point on, you will have a named decision maker who will make a decision on your application. And what we're trying to do, what Marianne's doing, is trying to fill that earlier part so that we can get a named contact earlier than that less than 5 months point. And that less than 5 months point, part of the problem, Reverend Foster, was that period is very long. When I took over in February last year, that period of allocation to a caseworker was quite long. It was about 18 months. And there was quite a period people spent after that preliminary assessment stage waiting for a caseworker, partly because of numbers of caseworkers available, partly because of some of the complexities of cases. And we've managed to squeeze that down now, and we're continuing to squeeze it still further so that there's less and less time people need to wait before they get that named caseworker at the point of the big substantive consideration. Is that okay? I'm quite close to this. I tried to explain that as best as I could, Marianne. Did that all make sense? Anything you want to add?
No, I think really some of the challenges I think that people have fed back to us that they've faced is not understanding the process. So this is somebody who right at the outset can explain that process to them, explain those periods where there will be a waiting point, and reassure people that, you know, it's natural, isn't it? When you're waiting for something, you fill in the gaps yourself and you worry about why you're waiting. So they'll be able to reassure them and keep in touch with them. And if there are any changes for them, and also as they build that relationship, if there are changes for people and they have to, for example, say they've got concerns about something, they could then refer them into the vulnerable persons team. It's somebody, whilst people are waiting, that they've got that ability to build a bit of a relationship with, and they get that support and checking in.
Okay, hope that was helpful. So I think we've got a few hands up.
Right, yeah, we have indeed. So we're going to go to the hands that are up. I'm going to bring in Lorna, Glenda, and then Cassandra. Lorna, if you want to come on and give a question.
Hi there, evening. Yeah, we've been getting quite a lot of cases coming through asking about refund of their naturalisation fee. So I thought it would be quite beneficial to ask about this publicly. So what's the stance in terms of claiming compensation or claiming back, you know, for people who had to pay out and naturalise, and some of them have had to pay, you know, thousands, some have had to pay in the hundreds. So what's the stance with the compensation scheme and eligibility for getting back naturalisation fees?
So Marianne will correct me if I'm wrong, but the scheme allows for repayment of fees where a status wasn't granted because people either couldn't or didn't demonstrate their lawful status in the UK. The scheme doesn't recompense people. So if people applied, there was a thing called Section 7 in the where people could regularise as members of the Commonwealth and acquire British citizenship. So it doesn't refund those fees, and it doesn't refund fees where people necessarily had to pay, say, to get indefinite leave to remain in the UK if they didn't have it already. It's a very narrow scheme. It's only focused on those people who already had lawful status and were unable to demonstrate that. So say they had lawful status, they came before 1973, so they were what we call freely landed. So they didn't need status, or they already had status, and for whatever reason they applied for, say, an NTL, what we call a no time limit document, or a document to confirm that, and for whatever reason that was refused, then they can apply for those fees to be refunded because that should never have been refused. They already had status. But sadly, it doesn't cover legitimate applications to acquire a status.
Okay, all right, thanks. I'd like to talk some more about that offline, away from here, because some people feel that they really had that status, and they feel that people are getting compensated or getting that status for free under the scheme. And if they'd have waited, they'd have got that status support for free under the Windrush
I
scheme.
recognise that. As you say, let's put that up offline. It's like, I suppose, like most schemes, nothing's perfect, but the scheme is not designed or intended to fix a kind of lawful application that was necessary to acquire a status.
Right. Yeah. So we'll pick that up offline. Let's get through some more of these points. Glenda, Cece, you want to come on, please? Thanks, Lorna.
Yeah. Hi, Nigel. Hi, Marion. My concern is about, I know that on previous meetings on this same platform, that there was a backlog of cases. And I think the last time that we discussed, they were up to 2021, I think it is. Has any progression been made, and can we say what stage we're at with the applications that's been submitted?
So when you say a backlog of cases, do you mean the cases, the claims that are still awaiting?
The applications that have gone through. I know the last time that we had a meeting, it was said that they were actually working on the applicants that had come through in 2021, I think it was. So
no, so we're allocating claims received now in 2023. So there are some older claims, and so
someone made a claim. Someone made a claim in 2020. Let's just say.
Yes, I don't think. I'm sure there are no claims from 2020, but there may be some older claims. A small number of older claims, and they're mainly, in fact, almost not all, but the majority of them are probate claims where we've been working with the probate office, or we're working with the claimant, or we're working with the individual to confirm that they're able to act as the administrator of the estate on which they've lodged a compensation claim for. And they do tend to be quite complicated. There is a process. So there's three parts to that. One, we can pay for those probate documents that are required. We've got an arrangement with the probate office where the team at the front end of can work with the probate office to get that that confirmation. And we can also work with individuals about whether they actually are the right person. So it needs to be someone who's granted probate or granted what they call a letter of administration that enables them to act for that estate. And it is quite complicated, and it has delayed a small number, not a massive number, but there are some older claims. But in terms of claims that are received, we're currently allocating claims received well into 2023. So as I said, less than 5 months old. So
in other words, there's no outstanding claims from 2021 or
no, there are there's a small number of outstanding claims, but they've all been actioned. They've all been in contact with an individual from our organization, and there is work ongoing, and a significant proportion of them are involved in a conversation with the probate office about whether they can act for and on behalf of the estate for who they have applied.
Yeah, but this isn't probate. Sorry to put up, but this isn't probate. I'm talking about applications being made for compensation alone, not probate, for compensation. Are you up to date with the applications? Is your department up to date with the applications?
Yes.
I mean, there's how many is outstanding from 2020? How many is outstanding from 21? Are you up to date now? Is everything in motion so that the people who put in their application are in the process of being paid now?
So all claims received before February February, I think, of this year, or maybe slightly later than that now, have had some action on them, and we will have been in contact with the individual. There'll be some older claims for whatever reason that we haven't either been able to get the information, as I say, primarily on probate, but all of those individuals will know that because they will have had at least one, probably lots more, contact with our team. Marianne, I mean,
yeah, perhaps if I could just jump in here, because I think I know where Glenda's going with this, and this may be one of these ones where we take this offline, because obviously you presented a slide earlier and you talked about final decisions and how many final decisions have been made. And what tends to happen is that as advocates, we become aware of, long-standing cases that have initially, made an application, in particular 1 year, and there seemed to be no, resolution to these cases from when they started their application and reaching a final decision. Notwithstanding that you mentioned that some of these cases are complex and so forth. So it could be then that this could be another piece of work that we look at with regards to the, those cases that have started an application and the point where they should have got to a final decision and we're not there yet. And perhaps that's, if I'm not jumping the gun with you, Glenda, that's perhaps something again that we could probably look at you with, because as advocates, we tend to be dealing with cases that seem to have started from when this whole thing started, if that makes sense.
And I have said, and I repeat on here, that if there's a claim, I mean, I've always said that if we're
not taking away that people haven't had,
if we're going to improve
contact, but it's just the speed of the final decision from how long they've been in the process.
The system, it's much easier to deal with specifics than generics. So if there's a case or a claim that you're particularly concerned about that's particularly old, then flag it up, we'll take a look at it, and we'll be able to explain, if you're the rep, as to why and where we are. My understanding, my expectation is that all of those older claims, we will have had a number of different contacts with. And in fact, if you put in a Windrush fact sheet, May 2023, that's we publish every month the data on the transparency. One of those tabs shows the age of the 2,000 claims that are waiting. It shows the age by, I'm not sure the breakdown, I think it's every 3 months or something. So it shows the age of claims that are waiting, and it shows how many have been outstanding for what length of time. But I'm very happy to look at claims that you're worried about. As I said, we're allocating claims. If you applied in 2023 and you haven't had a claim allocated, then that's worth us looking at, because as I say, we're allocating claims less than 5 months old.
Thanks a lot. We've got that point. We're going to bring in Cassandra, and then afterwards T is going to come in. Cassandra.
Shalom, good afternoon. Thank you for having me on tonight's meeting. My question is really simple. Over the next 6 weeks, will the Home Office Task Force team be showing up in person to anywhere within London region? I ask this because obviously the youth are going to be off for the summer, and they engage a lot in our community with the elders. So they are the best place to signpost, raise awareness of where you are going to be, to go where some of our elders have physical disabilities and get the information and take it back to the homes. And also, if you have meetings in person, do you still have scribes for the people with learning difficulties, mental health? I was at a meeting in the past, and a person A, for example, they couldn't read, but because you had scribes in attendance, they were able to verbalize, that was able to be taken down and their case. Or is everything now virtual and by phone for those who have like hearing difficulties, things like that? Because a lot of the elders in our community prefer first face-to-face, in person. It builds up trust. So sorry to keep it basic, but where will you be for the next few months where members of our community can come in person? Sometimes they're scared. And so they might want to take another member or a representative of the community. We have community advocates, Mr. Lee Jasper, for example, within the Brixton area, that can come and be an ally to them, to help them with their confidence, because some of them are scared.
Thanks,
Well,
Cassandra.
I'll ask Marianne to pick that. We were actually, sadly, Cassandra, we were in Brixton actually only, I think, a week or a week and a half ago. So we can share a little bit more maybe about the forward look and the point about accessibility, about people who can't access, say, PowerPoint slides. I mean, my PowerPoint slide today, I realized might not have been that accessible. So it's a really powerful point, and we will make sure that we're covering that off. So thank you for raising that, Marianne.
Yeah, so we've done, thanks for that, Cassandra. We've done a number of events. We started in sort of March time, and we've done 11 events, and then moving forward we've got 8 more planned through August and into early September, and a couple of those are in London. And what we're doing at the moment, we've been working with some of the stakeholders that we've been working with, so WNO and others, and we're planning in some events with them. But generally, if anybody who wishes to get in touch is holding some kind of event, we're going to be going back hopefully to Wellingborough, because they're going to be having like Family Fun Day, and that's exactly the kind of event that we can support at. And there'll be young people coming along, as you say, to provide information, and that's running through the school holidays as well. We want to have like a little stall at that. We've been invited to. So really what we're trying to do is just build up the information by coming to this type of event, and then as a follow on from that, if there are any other people who wish to hold an event and wishes to come along, then we just encourage them to get in touch. And that can be done via the helpline, and ask to speak to somebody about the outreach events, and then we'll be able to put one of the team to have a conversation. I do take on the point about the scribing. We don't have that facility at the moment, and I think that's something that we would need to take away to think about. As I say, we do have the facility to support people to have different conversations with the vulnerable persons team, and we will look at the different requirements that people have and need. So yeah, that is something that we do need to take away. Thank you for raising it.
Great, thanks a lot, and a really important point you've made there, Cassandra. I think we do need to explore all the access barriers for our communities and to make sure that we get around them. I think it was good at our launch in Bradford that the Home Office were actually there throughout the conference, and they were in a room so that people could actually go to them individually as well, and meet with them. But you made a really important point in terms of the potential access barriers and how we should be supporting and taking those down so that there's really equality of access for the information. I'm going to bring in T at this point. If you have the opportunity to come on camera, that would be helpful. But if you want to give your point or make your question.
Thanks, Clive. No, I cannot come on camera at the moment.
No problem. Go ahead, T.
Mr. Nigel, thank you. Speaking of access barriers, I'll pick up from there. What about overseas claimants? There are more of them overseas than there are in the UK. We've tried to assist. I work with Windrush Legal Advice Clinic in Wolverhampton. I live in Liverpool. We try to help overseas claimants do the online form, and it's particularly complicated compared to the paper forms that in-country applications are composed of the questions there. Online, they have on the government website that there is a paper version, a Word document. I've written to the Home Office asking for a copy so I can send to claimants. I've had no response. So my question to them is that, can they have a downloadable version that people can fill in and possibly send, rather than people who may not have access to computers or their literacy where computers are concerned are not that good? That will help a significant barrier to be reduced. My 2 original questions, maybe 3, stemmed around housing. So I received a final decision today, well, 2 days ago for a claimant, and it stated that as of the 1st of December 2014, through to the introduction of the new Immigration Act 2014, that under Section 20, tenancy agreements, you cannot make a claim prior to that if you were refused housing because you couldn't prove your status. Now, most of the Windrush generations came in the 60s, 50s, 70s. How is that fair? If they're making an application under housing or unable to access housing. My second point was, or is, again, Mr. Hill, under the Windrush scheme, there are 4 categories or subcategories, but under the status scheme, there are less. And for the question is, children of the Windrush generation and the grandchildren who are stuck in the Caribbean or anywhere in the Commonwealth, for whatever reason, they're unable to get back to the UK and gain settled status because they were not settled before 1974. How is that fair in keeping with the spirit of the Windrush status rectification scheme? And I want to draw parallelism with that point with the signing agreement for WNO applications, Mr. Hill. People coming from Hong Kong, their children and grandchildren can apply through them. How is that fair on them?
Thank you, T.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, T. So there's something there about overseas and applications for people who are overseas, a little bit of a technicality around tenancy, and then we come back to the question of widening the Windrush.
So first off, on the downloadable forms in the order of 1 to 4, see, I don't actually know the answer. I will check on that, but my understanding is that the international visas are all, I mean, all, not just Windrush, they're all electronic based. They're based on a system called Proviso that requires an online application, but I will take that back about whether, and there is a facility to enable an offline form. Do you know that, Marianne, to be used for an overseas application? Sorry.
No, I don't. I mean, I was, thinking of ways around that, but yeah, we need to take that away and consider.
I mean, we can help and facilitate, and we have dealt with overseas missions where people apply to help vulnerable people to apply, and we can help them over the phone to complete applications, but the system itself is different, as you described. All overseas applications are, all overseas applications for any product are now electronic, and they go through an automatic electronic system that does all the security checks and what have you. So I will take that away. Can you pick that up, Marianne, and just see, and we'll come back separately on that. On the housing question, so the housing is around what was called a hostile environment or a compliant environment. So where laws were put in place that required either illegal working check-in or landlord check-in, or in some cases driving license checks. And people, because they were unable to demonstrate their lawful status, they fell foul of that law. So landlords check-in status had to check status after a certain date, and they weren't able to give accommodation. And that's the reason for the date. I mean, if people couldn't get accommodation through other prejudices or other issues before that date, the position is that it wasn't because they had to in law demonstrate a lawful status, and the landlord had to check that, and that's the reason for that date. And I appreciate that feels frustrating, but it is about where there's a requirement to demonstrate lawful status to do something. So for example, in illegal working, employers had to check after a certain date whether people had a status document to enable them to work in the UK. And if they couldn't produce that status document, some people were literally dismissed from their employment. And in that circumstance, that's the kind of circumstance where people were here lawfully, where people can and would apply under the Windrush compensation scheme. On the other two categories, T, can I ask you, is it possible, Clive or Bishop Jadu, could you just put that in a couple of paragraphs, and I'll ask my policy team to respond properly to that, because I am not a caseworker, and you know the technicalities of, I understand and I know grandchildren are covered under the Windrush compensation scheme, and there are differences between the status and the compensation scheme, and I know that the overseas scheme only applies to free status and those who were settled ad indefinitely before in fact before 1173, you know, before the start of 1974. But those were both quite technical questions, and I don't think I could do them service on this call. So if you wouldn't mind just putting them in a couple of paragraphs, and then we can respond to those. I'll get Caroline or the policy team to respond to those, if that's okay. Sorry, I know that's not very satisfactory, but I'd be pushing at the edges of my knowledge and trying to answer those.
No, I apologize for ambushing you with a question. I did plan, well, I was directed to draft a letter to you on the same policy and actually quote legislation, so I will do that properly. But I was curious because I happened to meet you now to ask the question, so it will come properly and formally. My apologies.
Thank you for your forbearance. I mean, some of these things I half know the answer to, but I respect you, and you know, too much I would not. I often say, you know, I'm very careful because misinformation, as we've seen on social media, is a dangerous thing. So if you would, that'd be great, and I'll make sure you get a quick response.
Thank you.
Thanks, great. Yeah, I know T talked about this kind of a, you know, the wider Windrush, which we've talked about, which I think is something that we are seeing, where there may be some area of development, but we can certainly pick that up in the ongoing relationships. I'm going to bring in at this point Egg Lucas, and then afterwards we got the Ho.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Yeah. Good evening.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to put something to Nigel. I'm going to try and be humorous about it. Nigel, my case is plodding along, or my claim is plodding along. Okay, no problems. But amongst the letters I've had from you guys is something asking me on the impact of this situation on me for the duration I've endured it. Now, in a hypothetical question to you is, considering I've been here since 1973, worked, married, children, home, all the way through until 1999, when my status started being denied, and then you guys are writing to me telling me that you've checked with other government departments and you can't find information, etc., on the periods in question. I've then gone and checked with an example, the Inland Revenue, and they've sent me a full list since I started working at the age of 16. How should I express that as the confidence in the people I'm dealing with in the Home Office, and since this saga started way back in 1999 with me? How can I define the impact on that? That's the first question. The second question I was going to ask is of the homeless people, because if someone is working and generating income, etc., obviously their access to housing, etc., is easier. If they're not, and they're being denied benefits also, then it becomes a huge hill. Yeah. So, of the homeless people that is it Gabby or Marianne was speaking about earlier on, how many are still pending, as in being out sofa surfing on the streets, etc., when they're compared to the Hong Kong people coming to the UK and the refugees that the government is spending huge amounts of money housing and now kicking out to Rwanda? The other two questions I want to ask.
Thanks, Egg. And as we said earlier, we just got to be really cautious on personal cases and claims and how far we can go with them, but we appreciate the comments you've made. Nigel.
I try and give it. I mean, I give a direct answer. I mean, my advice is, as you know, if you've got a letter, you'll have a named caseworker. So my advice is you've got two options actually. You can, Marianne, I'm sure will confirm it's possible to speak to the helpline to give some advice about how you might and what might be relevant. But the most straightforward thing is to link up with the caseworker. As Reverend Foster said, it's difficult to say about what checks will have engendered for any individual. But what we've tried to do on the application form and the guidance is to link. So there are 13, as I'm sure you're aware, there are 13 areas within which we can and do pay compensation, or 14 if you include close family members. And each of those areas, there's a description about, it's mainly financial losses with the exception of impact of life. And my advice is the more information you can give, the easier and the clearer the decision the caseworker is able to make about what compensation is.
Okay, I understand where you're going, Nigel. I understand. I'm sorry to interrupt you. The thing is that I'll try and look for the caseworker's name, but I think I've got about 4 different people so far. Okay, we'll leave it there. I hear the point. What about the homeless, the number of people that's in the pipeline, either sofa surfing, on the streets, or whatever?
Yeah, we've got that, Egg. Yeah, we've got the question. Thank you. Yeah.
So I think we were asked this quite recently in a letter. And I mean, we would, if we did a data search, I expect we could show who's applied under homelessness, but those applications would be ongoing. We wouldn't know whether people were necessarily homeless. And I would just reinforce the fact that the Windrush compensation scheme has no end date and has no financial cap. So if the implication of your question was that, monies and resources are being diverted to, I think you mentioned Ukrainian or other refugees, then that isn't the case. The Windrush compensation scheme is self-contained. We deal with those individuals.
I'm asking the question in the context of, if these people are still homeless, has the government considered putting them into a hotel as they are with the refugees? Not necessarily Ukraine refugees. Has the government, I wrote to you about this in February, yeah? And you responded very kindly. I appreciated that. But it seems to be still talking about the situation of homeless people, not knowing how many are out there, having spent all their lives, it doesn't make sense.
So the Windrush compensation scheme and the response does not, we've got no provision to provide for or pay for housing. As Marianne said at the early part of this conversation, we have links with local authorities, which is their job to provide housing, and we have links with shelter and other housing charities who we work with very closely. But and we have provided urgent exceptional payments for things like hotel accommodation where people are homeless for short periods whilst they're waiting for the housing applications. But no, we do not pay for and we don't have social housing for Windrush applications. And as you say, I think I remember I said that in the letter that we sent.
Okay, so thanks, Nigel. I think we've got that point, that you've made that point, and thanks for those questions, Egg. Now, I've got to say to everyone is that we're into the last 8 minutes or so, and we have to have a hard finish at 8:30. So these last 3 points, because Bishop Desmond has to give a little bit of a briefing, and I'm in a particular institution at the moment where I'm going to be kicked out at 8:30. So Lahore, if you want to come on, and then these are the last 3 questions, and then Roland, and then T. Ashley, if you want to make your questions succinctly, and if we can get succinct responses within the last 7 minutes, please, that would be helpful. Lahore.
Good evening, guys. Everyone, good evening. I just wanted to ask a question, basically, because I feel, even though I understand and grasp a lot of what is happening, I think as a person born in the country, I still feel alienated by understanding how I relate to someone that might be a refugee or someone that might be as old as my mum, who came here in the 70s, or my dad in 70 something. So I'm a bit confused as into like how understand things from someone born in the country and what it means entitlement. I know who I will speak to, but I wanted to ask because there's loads of us.
So maybe that offline Clive Foster or Bishop Jeddah or one of the people on this call, or the helpline could explain that. So it would only apply to somebody born in the UK if they were unable to demonstrate their status. So some people born in the UK after 1983, for example, 1st of January 1983, if one of your parents wasn't a British citizen or settled here, you might have difficulty confirming that you were British, for example. So then you might come under the Windrush compensation scheme. It's less likely actually if you were born in the UK that you would have had those problems, but you might have had those problems, as I say, if you had to confirm your status. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Lahore, that you've raised, because there is an information sharing and new people are coming to this as well. So don't feel any way about this. There is some technical things about this in terms of immigration law as well. And I think you've raised a really important point. And one of the things about Windrush National Organisation is about providing information as well. Some people will be eligible, some people will not. But it's really important that we cast the net as wide as we can. And I'm happy to, as you said, Nigel, that we can, that's why, as Cassandra mentioned, that's why we're doing these roadshows. So perhaps one of the things, Lahore, is that, you know, we've got your details, let's keep in touch. But we can be providing some more bite-sized information as well with regards to the eligibility piece. And starting to do something around that. But thanks for that, Lahore. Did you want to make another point?
Mentioning it only, not because of what you both said, I'm very aware of it, and maybe because I've been applying and not understanding all the legal jargon. I'm very aware of the answers that you said. But what the issue is that it's quite alienating because it sounds like it's just the aunties at church. Or
yeah, you're right.
So Lau, this is not about communities of people who might be, for whatever reason, feeling alienated, or that laws have been applied differently. It's only about, the Windrush compensation scheme is only about those people who were lawfully here, who had a lawful status and couldn't demonstrate it and had some impact. So it's quite narrow, the Windrush compensation scheme. It isn't intended to kind of mop up all the other frustrations and issues that people might deal with, and understand that can be a bit, it's a bit narrow sometimes.
I'm not disputing it before. What I mean is, for example, what not having a passport means as a 33-year-old man in this country means discrimination, which I'm not asking for compensation for. It means so many things in terms of access to life, which also means mental health. So I don't know where I fit in. That is my question.
Yeah, so I think you speak to the whole issue of identity, and yeah, the whole question of identity and our relationship in this country. This situation is an international one. It's not just people of the Caribbean. It is an international human rights issue. Okay, we got the last couple of minutes. Thanks, Lahore. I'm going to bring in Roland and then T. Ashley. Bishop Desmond, just be on ready to take over in case I have to leave and you probably end this. But go ahead, Roland.
But it's a bit noisy, but I'll put my question in the chat as well. This should be a quick one, really. Nigel, for those people who have applied for returning resident visa from outside the UK, if you've gotten all the relevant information, documentation, proof that they got close family members in the UK, close, strong, and continuous ties to the UK, how long does it take to process such application, a returning resident visa? Thank you.
So Roland, I'm gonna have to check, because I don't manage that team. As I said to you, they're accountable to me, but I don't manage them directly. So My understanding is they also publish data on a quarterly basis that if everything's in order, then they're pretty much up to speed. But can I come back to you on that in terms of how long? So what the question is, if it's a straightforward visa application with all the information in hand, how quickly should people expect to get a visa?
Yeah, great. Yeah, we've picked that up. So we'll get a response back through WNO back to Roland on that one. And then we can also publish that on our website. I'm going to bring in Ashley, Ashley, as our last question. And then Bishop Desmond, if you could pick this up and probably close off as well, that'd be great. Go ahead, Ashley.
Hi, just a quick one. I wanted to ask, in terms of like applicants where they feel as though they're not really being heard by their caseworkers in some sense, how are you guys going about that in terms of who would you go to if you're already with a caseworker but you haven't had any updates? Is there anyone who you would specifically say that people can go to actually say, I don't feel like my case is progressing, or I don't feel, I know there's organisations, but if you've already got a caseworker and if you're an independent that's not with organisations, who do you go to?
So I would, well, Marianne's on the call. She manages the helpline. If you get in touch with the helpline, they can give you information on your claim. They can check whether, for example, we've had some claims where we've written out to people, maybe they've moved or they've changed address. So you can get in touch with the helpline and we can check if there's any issues with contact. We can check where the claim is up to. If you feel you're not being listened to, then, as I say, you can go through the helpline. But if the caseworker doesn't listen to you and you get a decision, for example, then, as Marianne mentioned earlier, there is an independent review process. So you can submit for free what's called a tier 1 review. So a completely different caseworker would then look at the claim completely from beginning to end. And if you're still not happy, then there's what's called a tier 2 review, which is a completely independent review by a completely external adjudicator. And that's also free. So, it isn't just down to one caseworker listening to your story, and hopefully it won't come to that. There are other opportunities if you don't feel your story has been heard, if that makes sense and helps.
No, that's helpful. It's just because I know with some applicants, they don't feel like they're being heard sometimes by their caseworkers. So, even down to the extra information you've given, it's actually helpful because it's not always put out there to say it's not just one decision. You can get a second or a third decision. And I think that should just be mentioned sometimes.
I mean, there are actually 4 opportunities for challenge. So the first is what they call a tier 1 decision. So that's a completely independent Home Office caseworker senior caseworker will look at the claim and you'll get a tier 1 decision. Then if you're still not happy, you can lodge what's called a tier 2 decision. That goes to, as I say, an independent external adjudicator. I think they sit within still the government HMRC, but they're not part of the Home Office. And finally, but you need to go through your MP for that. If you're still not happy after the tier 2 decision, then you can ask your MP to write to the Parliamentary Ombudsman, who looks at whether processes themselves are fair. And that's like the final review if you're really unhappy still having gone through that process. But hopefully, one or other of those reviews, you will feel that you've been heard and you've had a fair decision. Sorry, Bishop Jeddy, I was going on a little bit.
Thank you very much, everyone, for your questions this evening. Some of you joined late, and I think I took note of what Cassandra said, and thank you, Cassandra. What we are doing is we are having our national tour to 21 cities across the UK, including some dates in London. We are seeking to work with local partners. So we're not just coming in, because we see the importance of going into working areas and leaving advocates there as well, because it doesn't make no sense going and doing this and you're not leaving anyone there for people to talk to. When we go there, we do what we call scouting the area, meaning that we go in and we listen to difficulties people have. Just to reassure you, we've had meetings in the past. public meetings. I remember 5 years ago, we had several people who could not read or write, and we ensured that provision was put in place for them. So everything you've said is welcomed, and thank you for reiterating that, because remember, different parts of the UK have different dynamics, and that's what we've got to work with more than anything else. Laho, one of the things is people in your age bracket we're dealing with now. Nigel is aware we've dealt with one recently, someone who was born after 1983. That's now been resolved in terms of them getting their passport. Importantly, we need to reach people like that so that they can come forward, so we don't have another brewing scandal on our hands. And that's another important issue now, because now's the time to sort it. In some cases, maybe some aren't Windrush, maybe someone's not looked at the tracking system properly in terms of nationality, but we still can use this scheme to actually deal with that. In terms of compensation and caseworkers, we're the Windrush National Organisation. Contact any one of our advocates. If you feel dissatisfaction, then just contact us and we'll advise you what you need to do. That's the other side of the coin. Contact their helpline with the Home Office, but come to us as well. Now, someone did ask a question about the engagement fund, Nigel, but I can answer that on your behalf because we've discussed that and it is in the process of being set up. And I think that's the answer to the question that was in the chat that was sent to me privately. It is in the process of being set up because we've had the conversation with the Home Office in terms of that and what the dynamics are in terms of applying. That will be out in due course. Anything to add to that, Nigel?
No, well, as you will have seen that I've now taken on all of those wider engagement functions. Marianne's actually leading on this, so we are working to get that out as soon as we can.
Okay.
We're almost there, I think.
Great. So thank you very much. So that just reiterates what the position is there. And remember, our national tour, we're starting the face-to-faces. We have private sessions as well at the face-to-face sessions as well. So the preliminary session will be very short, and then we'll go into the one-to-ones where you can then ask specific questions or raise specific concerns that you've got, including that if you're not happy with your casework, you live in Birmingham, the 1st of August, you live in the wider West Midlands, the 29th of August in Walsall, live in Nottingham or Derby, 19th of September, and other dates will be issued in due course as well. But remember to reiterate, if you are interested in getting involved with WNO, drop us an email. It's as simple as that. Drop us that email. And, you know, we're not an exclusive club. That's all I'm going to say to you. And then finally, those with questions in the chat that have not been answered, the meeting's been recorded. This will be up on YouTube by tomorrow morning. And because we've got a quicker system now, and in terms of any questions in the chat, those will go across to the Home Office and everything will be on our website. So thank you very much for joining this evening. As we normally do, we do close in prayer. So please bow your heads, those who wish to observe it at this time. Heavenly Father, just thank you. We thank you for bringing us through this meeting this evening. Thank you for understanding. Thank you for patience. And Father, thank you for openness and honesty. Father, as we embark upon the next stage of face-to-face meetings, please bless us and go with us. And Father, let us just continue to do in what is right and let it be about seeking justice for the Windrush generation, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. So God bless you all. So our next meetings will be on the 1st of August. For August, our next meetings will be a face-to-face at the Cannon Street Memorial Baptist Church on Tuesday, the 1st of August. That's at 6 p.m. Then our online meeting will be the 22nd of August online. And then our face-to-face meeting in Walsall, wider West Midlands, the 29th of August at 6 p.m. as well. So until then, please be safe, and we will ensure that this information, the video goes up tonight, and also as well the necessary questions go off to the Home Office. And T, if you could forward us a copy of your correspondence, we'll make sure that that goes to Nigel as well. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening. God bless you all.
Thank you.
Blessings, everyone.
One love.
One love. Bye.